All right. So this is Keller Williams risk management, how to avoid being sued. All right. We're just going to go over what does risk management mean, what are the common areas, what are the best practices, and examples of the New Jersey Real Estate Commission findings. Okay, what successful business agents do every day. Have you heard lead generate enough times? Generate for buyers and sellers, make presentations to get listings, make presentations and to buyers, preview real estate. And to run a business, you market the listings, you show buyers, you negotiate contracts, transaction management, set goals, vendor management, compliance, and risk management. It's a part of almost everything that you do every day. Okay, risk management, the forecasting and evaluation of financial risks together with the identification of procedures to avoid or minimize their impact. What are the risks in real estate? Actions that leave you open to code of ethics violations, because we answer not only to the law, we answer to our code of ethics. Do you know when we first had the code of ethics? Do you know what year the code of ethics were created? Anybody want to venture a guess?
I'm guessing, is it 64?
1964?
Yeah.
Go way back.
Oh, it's that? Oh, okay.
I think it's 1913.
Okay.
Don't quote me, even though we're being recorded. Yeah, 1913. I think we were one of the first to ever have a code of ethics. Okay. Any violations or complaints are adjudicated at the board level. Remediation is generally educational. So if you think a fellow member has violated the code of ethics, you file a complaint to the grievance committee at the Board of Realtors. Okay. Okay. Doesn't want to move on. And I have frozen. How successful. There we go. All right. Let me see if I can work it here a minute. Errors and omissions. You've all paid that. You pay that every month. Errors and omissions. It's insurance that covers liabilities for mistakes, errors, and negligence in the listing and selling activities of a real estate office. It does not cover financial or punitive damages. In other words, if you get a fine, it doesn't cover it. Does not cover negligence or misrepresentation when the agent is found to have acted willfully, recklessly, or in bad faith. It doesn't cover fraud. It doesn't cover malicious intent. If you make an honest mistake, know that you will be covered. You may be challenged, but you'll be covered. All right. Any questions? It's not letting me do it. Okay. Sorry, guys. Here we go. The most common areas of liability: failure to disclose property defect. Now, we can't be expected to know what's inside a wall, but we are expected to investigate when we see something suspicious. A prime example is water in the basement. All right. If you see that there are watermarks and you don't pursue asking the seller what the history is, you could be found liable and in cahoots with the seller. Okay, breach of fiduciary duty, where you don't take care of your client. You don't put them first. Prime example, you show a house and your client's thinking of buying it, but you like it too for yourself, so you go ahead and buy it. That would be a breach of your fiduciary relationship. Believe it or not, you have to take care of the client before you take care of yourself.
Ask a question, Patty. You gave the example of water in the basement. So what if I saw something suspicious, like staining on the rug or something, and I asked, you know, has there ever been flooding down here? And they lie to me and say no. Like, how far should I pursue that, or am I responsible to pursue that if they flat out lie to me?
Yeah, and sometimes people do. I think
that happens a lot. People try to cover things up.
Yeah, a basement that's freshly painted is a red flag. I think the best thing to do is to challenge them and educate them. Explain that there is a written seller disclosure that actually protects them. You see, if the seller says, yes, we get water in the basement, and then explains the circumstances, let's say during heavy rains that come from the east, that actually covers them. If the buyer comes back after closing and wants to go after the seller because they got water in the basement, any judge is going to say, but they told you there's water in the basement.
Yeah.
All right, and actually protects them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, giving confusing or misleading information to clients. Okay, I'm not sure I have a prime example there. By the way, failure to disclose property defect. Believe it or not, occasionally there's a hardwood floor, or so we think, and actually underneath the rug is not hardwood floor, it's subflooring. It's always better to say, the owner says. Let's say you can't verify whether there's hardwood floors or not. It's really, the carpeting's really tacked down. You can't pull it up in the corner. There's no closet for you to look in to see if there's hardwood floors. You would say, owner says there are hardwood floors under this carpet. Okay? Protect yourself. It's not you. Failing to protect client data. Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We used to, believe it or not, years ago, we actually used to put people's social security numbers on the contracts. We don't do that anymore. That said, there will be times when you do a credit check for a tenant. And just to let you know, when there's a credit check, obviously the tenant pays for it and gives it to you. You are not supposed to share anything other than the summary page with the agent who represents the landlord. Okay, you may find some pushback for that. Sometimes the landlord will say, I want the full credit report. Then if that's the case, you can pass on that information to the tenant and get written permission to share the full credit report. But the full credit report is really quite detailed and can be very personal. So just think long time before you allow your clients to share the full report. You're only obligated to share the summary page. Althea, just jump in, honey.
Yeah. When you say just the summary report, are you talking about like the background check or?
Yeah,
like...
it's a credit check. There is, I don't know of a company that does a background check. There is a company called NTN, National Tenant Network. They stay away from the term background check, but they do a credit check. They check the public eviction notices, and they check the terrorist watch list.
Okay.
So it's not a full, and that happens to be one of the most thorough. Most landlords will work off of a credit check and, by the way, and the lease application, which would give references. So if you are representing the landlord, you're going to want to make sure the landlord checks the references. Not you, that's the landlord's responsibility.
Okay.
But that the landlord has references in a lease application. It would be a shame to find out the tenant didn't work out and the realtors didn't provide a lease application for the landlord.
Thank you.
There are lots of examples. Protecting client data, that's anything that you would consider personal, financial, anything that you yourself would not want shared or exposed or treated casually. Do the same for your client. Bodily injury. Okay, yeah, I can see where that could get you in trouble. Don't hit clients. All right, I don't think there's any more to say there. Okay, most common areas for problems, the disclosure issues, the condition of the property. I mentioned hardwood floors under the carpeting. Maybe, maybe not. Water penetration or mold. I think sellers have come to realize the seller disclosure form is, I don't want to say their friend, but is a layer of protection for them if they're honest. If they're not honest, it's a layer of liability for them, because then it's proof that they lied. And you know what? One thing you can say to a landlord who's thinking of not sharing the fact that they get water in the basement. When someone moves in, and then let's say there's a storm and they get water in the basement, who do you think they're going to talk to? Right? The neighbors. If people move in, they've met the neighbors and they say, we got water in the basement last week. When we had that heavy storm, and the neighbor says, well, yeah, they always got water in their basement during heavy storms. Right? That's a real liability. Okay, abandoned oil tanks. Now, most attorney letters will state that they will do an oil tank sweep, but it's your job to make sure that that's in the attorney review letter and that it gets done. They're looking for abandoned oil tanks. All right, septic and well issues. They both need to be tested. The water needs to be tested as to whether it's potable. And pending changes to property taxes. When do property taxes change?
August.
Thank you. August. Yep. So you want to be sure that you're on top of the latest, whether you're the listing agent or you're working with the buyer. Common areas for disclosures continued, providing incomplete or misleading reports from third parties. Now, I see the asterisk there, and I'm not sure quite where it takes us, but just be sure that if there's a septic inspector, if there's the guy doing the tank sweep, the chimney, if there's a chimney inspection, that all of those reports go clearly and fully to the buyer. You can ask permission from the buyer, because the buyer pays for them, if you could have a copy. Zoning rules that limit usage. If your buyer tells you that they want to store an RV on the property, some towns will not allow that. Now, one area I'm going to caution you about is I don't want you to be the one to go to the town and find out what the regulations are. Why is that? And I'm going to go pull the blind. Hang on. Why would you not be the one going to the town?
Your signatures on it?
Well, let me give you a scenario. Let's say you go to the town and you speak to Mary Beth. And Mary Beth says, yeah, there's not a problem. Not a problem at all. So you go back to your buyer and say, Mary Beth at the town hall said there's not a problem. They close, they're in the house, they park their RV, the neighbors complain, and they get a summons. Well, it turns out Mary Beth was filling in for someone who was out for lunch. and really didn't know what she was doing. Okay, and now you are liable because you put yourself into the line of communication. So it's so much better. You can assist, because, and you know, we're in this business to help people. You can assist and say, listen, I want you to, you know, we can go to the town hall together and let's ask. Let's make sure we get the right information. Okay. Flood zones. If you're ever questioning, you know, there are flood maps in your MLS, but they don't give the structure. And sometimes the listing agents aren't accurate. Okay? Sometimes the listing agents are not accurate about flood zone status. If you have any questions, who can you go to? Carnegie Title. They'll do a search for you. If you call them and say, listen, I'm about to put my buyer under contract, but I'm really questioning whether any of the structures are in a floodplain. Can you do a quick search for me? Another problem is off-site conditions, and the contract mentions this, by the way. Off-site conditions are usually like Superfund sites, and there's usually like a half mile, might be an important measure. But if you know there's a Superfund site close, I'd say within a mile, your buyer needs to know. Okay. Licensing status of parties. Let's say your buyer has a New Jersey real estate license. You got to disclose that. The contract makes that easy for you. And conflicts of interest. Okay. When in doubt, disclose. When in doubt, disclose. Ah, Jack's with us. Always get a completed seller disclosure. Seller must complete, no helping, your pen does not touch. I'm going to add to what Jack said. When in doubt, disclose and explain. Like I did before, yes, we get rain when we get an easterly heavy rain. Okay, always get a completed seller disclosure. Please make sure the seller answers all the questions. There's a liability if they skip over a question. Correct? Does that make sense? If it's something they don't want to answer, they can just skip over it. Wrong. Okay, look for and confront any red flags. We've mentioned a couple of those. And always qualify any disclosures you make according to the seller as per the current tax records. Okay, according to the flood map on Realist. Be knowledgeable about off-site condition and the town's master plan. By the way, just a little aside there, if there is low or moderate income housing, you cannot disclose it as such. If you know that the vacant lot behind the house is going to be or is zoned for low and moderate income, it's discrimination. It's implied discrimination. However, you can send them to the town to get factual information. Always encourage your clients' due diligence. What I just said, encourage them to go look. You can assist them. You can go with them. Always provide third-party reports. Be aware of potential conflicts of interest. And be willing to walk away if you are asked to conceal pertinent information, which is kind of what you were getting at before, Laura. No listing is worth it. Okay, do you remember studying this in licensing? Old car? Does that ring a bell? Laura, you're saying no, old car? They don't teach it that way anymore? These are your fiduciary duties: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. Old car. Okay. Common fiduciary problem areas include failing to present offers. If you are a listing agent, do you have to present a verbal offer? A realtor calls you and says, Laura, My buyer won't put it in writing, but they're going to offer $550. They want a closing July 1st. Do you have to present that to the seller?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Right on. In fact, one of my agents years and years ago had a situation where a realtor herself was trying to buy the house and refused to put it in writing. And my agent kept saying, put it in writing, put it in writing. However, my agent was smart and ethical and knowledgeable. And so she told her seller about it. She said, hey, she's not willing to put it in writing, but here's the offer. Here's the guts of the offer. And of course, we all feel if an offer is not in writing, if somebody's not willing to put it in writing, makes you wonder about their motivation and anyway, okay.
Why would
So
they be so
go ahead.
adamant? Why would they be so adamant to not put it in writing?
Beats me, but it certainly raises questions as to how sincere they are.
Yeah, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wouldn't
Okay.
be considered a strong offer.
Yeah, exactly. You wonder what their motivation is if they can't put it in writing. How difficult is that?
I mean, eventually it's all going to be in writing.
Yeah. And then when they didn't
Okay.
get the offer, they filed a complaint with the real estate commission.
Are you kidding?
I'm not.
Oh my God.
Yep.
You're
Okay.
funny.
That's why we're having this session tonight, because you can't always predict and people don't act like we do. Okay, another fiduciary problem is disclosing issues of client motivation to another party without authorization. Mr. and Mrs. Seller are getting a divorce. All right. Can you disclose that to a buyer's agent? No, not without permission from the seller. Partly because, as it says later on, it can include a level of eagerness or willingness to come up or down in price. If the buyer knows the seller's getting a divorce and they can't wait to unload this house, the sellers lose leverage, right? The buyer says, hey, I got them over a barrel. I'll come in a little bit lower. You okay? So, and same with the buyer. Without their permission, you can't say, hey, they got to find a house in 30 days. Because then the seller says, well, gee, now I know I've got them over a barrel. So you've got to be very careful how you phrase things, because you are exposing vulnerabilities of your clients. And failure to accurately maintain MLS status. Please always, when you're involved in a transaction and you have an executed offer and it's with, all parties have a copy, that's the buyer and seller. By the way, the attorney is not a party to the contract, so giving the contract to the attorney is not considered an executed contract. It must go to the parties, the buyer and the seller. You are not a party to the contract, but you want to be sure, if you are working with the buyer, that the listing agent quickly reports something as attorney review and process. And then once that is completed, under contract and closed, especially when, as you get busier and you're going to be applying for the Circle of Excellence Club and Achievement, you don't want to be applying for it and find out they reported it incorrectly. Okay? So just maintain that. And if you are the listing agent, be on top of it. Okay, breach of fiduciary duty, failing to follow up with vendors and make sure the transaction is moving along. An example might be, the buyer is not using one of our mortgage partners and they're using someone that, whatever. And you call that mortgage broker and you say, how's the process going? And that person says, no problem, things are going well. Okay, you hang up, you're happy. Well, this is a true life situation. I had an agent, this happened to an agent. And I happened to say to her, what's going on with that transaction? And she said, well, I just checked and they said the mortgage is going fine. Turns out when she later called and started asking specific questions, not how's it going, she realized the application wasn't even complete. The buyer had not completed the application. So those are the kind of questions that you need to ask. Is the application complete? Is the appraisal ordered? Have the verifications of employment, assets, and income been done? Has it gone to underwriters? This is how you move a transaction along as a professional. Same with the attorney. You want to be sure that the attorney is corresponding in a timely manner and addressing the issues that have been brought to their attention, particularly inspection issues. That's your job, by the way. Stimulate and move along. Sometimes you got to move along the attorney. Okay, allowing improper access to the property. I hope you all know that during, when the house is on the market, the seller has agreed to allow people to come in the form of putting on a lockbox. Once the house is in attorney review, it depends on whether the seller is going to continue showings. They should, by the way. Once it's under contract, showings normally stop. But the lockbox may still be on because of inspections. They may leave the lockbox on as a courtesy to the agent who needs to get in to let the inspectors in. Using that lockbox to get in without making an appointment is improper access to the property. Walking the property once it's under contract, improper access, or walking the property without an appointment. I think some of this is courtesy. Failing to maintain current in knowledge and skills. Big time, at every team meeting, we have Randy address whatever may be new in the real estate industry, any new rules, regulations, and/or forms, but it's still up to you to stay current. And continuing ed helps you do that. Failure to adequately secure the client's confidential data. Okay. If you put it in command, it's safe and confidential. Fiduciary best practices, go the extra mile, do the extra for the client. Check with the town for opening or missing permits. That's the Oprah form. Check with the town for proper zoning or land use requirements. Again, I'm going to have you involve your client. Check with the town for changes in taxes that are not yet reflected in the MLS. I think we covered that. And obtain key documents that may be relevant for your client. Surveys, legal filings, association bylaws, etc. If they're buying a condo, you want to help them get the association bylaws and original documents, original deed to the attorney. Okay, fiduciary best practices, be able to recognize trouble areas, environmental issues, damage or defects. Always give multiple names for references and encourage the client to due diligence. Never give advice above your pay grade regarding legal, tax, environmental, or structural. It's very easy to kind of step into that trap, but don't. Just remember, legal tends to be a big one for us. We tend to, especially after we've been in the business for a while, we might put a paragraph in the contract that really is practicing law. Environmental or structural, always refer to one of those third-party vendors and get another inspection if need be.
Patty, does Keller Williams have a legal department or just the partners that we would use separately or individually?
Yes, there is a legal counsel through our corporate office. But yeah, does that answer you?
Yep.
You really have to go through your team leader and to counsel with them, but the first place to go would be the broker.
Okay, great.
The broker really knows quite frank, unless you're dealing with an attorney who's a broker attorney, you're better off going to the broker.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Never tell a seller what they can get for their home, because you don't know. You really don't know. You can look back at historical data to have a guess on what would be a current price. Never tell a buyer what to offer for a home. Always be upgrading your skills. And common problem areas in this area of fair housing and anti-discrimination. What is the code, what number of the Code of Ethics deals with discrimination?
Fair housing?
But what's the number of it?
Oh,
10, and it's always 10, so that the public can file a fair housing or discrimination complaint. Always. Okay. So violating fair housing and discrimination, you can be found legally liable and Code of Ethics liable. Okay. What are some examples of discrimination? Whoops, back. Sorry. Okay. Steering a client into a specific neighborhood. Do you know what I mean by steering? Anybody want to give me an example of steering?
Hi, it's like when you're trying to force them into a particular neighborhood because of their religion or color of their skin.
That's right. And it's usually not done openly. It's like, you know, you might find this neighborhood a little bit more comfortable for you because there's a lot of people who speak your language. Okay. You may have a buyer ask you, how many people of my type are in this town? If you're asked that, how would you answer that?
You could go to the town for that record, no?
You say, neither my office, my company, nor the Board of Realtors keeps that information. If it's important to you, you can go to the town or the Board of Ed. Okay? Do not. Don't even go there. Do not answer it. Don't even hint at an answer. Okay? Being inconsistent in pre-qualification requirements. This is a big one. In fact, Inman reported not too long ago, there were 4 realtors in Long Island who got caught treating people differently based on physical appearance. All right, demanding pre-approvals from some and not from others. Be very careful. Failure to accurately interpret the risks of lending options like FHA to clients. We have a lot of, never used to, but we're getting more and more FHA. The risks is that, you know, there are additional inspections and sometimes sellers are uncomfortable with the small down payment. Okay. Do you know what a Section 8 is?
Yes.
low income?
Subsidized.
Subsidized income. Now, it's subsidized by the government. It's guaranteed payment. Guaranteed. The thing is with Section 8s, it frequently doesn't cover the entire monthly rent. And that's the holdup. I had a friend who was in a rough patch in her life. At the time, she was Section 8. And I needed to get her a rental. And I had a real conundrum. I didn't know whether to take her all over Hell's Half Acre, only to find out that the listing agent would say to me, we don't take Section 8, which, by the way, is not the listing agent. The listing agent hadn't even probably spoken to the landlord about it. Or whether I say right up front, my friend is a Section 8, because then it would just close us out. I would ask for interviews because I knew she presented herself very well. But be aware, sometimes interviews are ways that people are exercising discrimination. Althea, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have that issue right now. I'm having an issue with a Section 8 client, and we were almost in an apartment, and then all of a sudden the listing agent told us that the landlord could not wait for the next month, so he rented it to someone else.
Yeah, my friend lost one because of the inspection. Yeah, which takes time.
Yeah.
And the landlord said, I'm not waiting. I have another.
Yeah, I understand that the paperwork has to go in on the 15th of the month.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I learned from it right now. But we've been working for about 2 months now.
Wow.
And I really feel bad for this person.
Yes, yes. We all have rough patches, guys, and we're there to help them. Yeah.
Yeah, but is it that we as realtors are not telling our landlords that, Section 8 is a great thing for them to do?
Yes, that's possible. Yes.
How can we, let us know that, okay, this is what we need to tell them when we have our listing for a rental? Sell Section 8.
Yeah. We finally found a landlord who was very familiar with Section 8, and it was great. It was just, she got a great apartment. Yeah, it's a frustration.
Yeah.
Many agents make the decision for their landlord clients, and they shouldn't, number one. Number two, they're uneducated about Section 8 and or have had some bad experiences. Now, the only thing with Section 8s, sometimes there is bad credit, and the landlords can refuse the tenant based on the bad credit.
Okay.
That is legit.
Patty?
Just so happened my friend had good credit. Yeah, go ahead.
How does somebody get Section 8? Like, is that something I would have to help somebody get qualified for, or do they come to me with that?
They usually come to you with that.
Okay.
Althea, if you can jump in and help me at all on this.
Yeah, my client is in Patterson. Actually, I've been working with two clients with Section 8, and I understand that there are two different kinds of Section 8. There's the local Section 8 where you could just within this town, the county that you're in, and then there's one where you could go anywhere in the United States and still use your Section 8. The paperwork has to go in by the 15th of the month for them to even look at your application. And it does take a while because they have to do different, the inspection is different from a regular rental.
Yeah, and you know what? In this market, it's hard for someone who has the cold hard cash.
Yeah.
But Section 8 will also, I think, pay the commission.
No, they don't pay the commission. They don't pay commission. The client is responsible for Section 8 for the commission.
Okay. I think in the incident I was in, which was several years ago, that Section 8 did pay the commission.
Yeah, because I was actually speaking to the my client's social worker from Section 8, and she told me that they do not pay the commission. The client has to pay the Section 8 the commission. Which is
real hard. If they're Section 8, how are they paying the commission?
Yes, the commission was going to be like over $4,000.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
One more Section 8 question, because I'm trying to work with a lady right now who is low income. How does one become eligible for Section 8? Like, do you have to have a disability or unable to work or old? What is it?
You do have to have an income.
Okay.
Maybe like disability, or you have a job and you have they subsidize your rent. I think every town or every county has a housing authority, so you would send that person there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. So say, thank you, Althea, for stepping in.
You're welcome. I'm glad to help.
Okay.
I have a question as well, if you know, Althea. Is there a section on the MLS for Section 8?
No, there's no section, but you can write it in the comments. We'll accept Section 8.
Okay.
If
You
you're
can
the
write it-
listing agent,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you're the listing agent, but what I've been doing is that when I call someone, I always ask them, because I have to be upfront, will your client take Section 8? And sometimes when they come out and tell you no, you know that it's the realtor telling you that. It's not the
The
client.
landlord, yeah.
Yeah. Because they don't want to be bothered, because it's a lot of paperwork. It's like a mini book you have to fill out.
Jeez. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, Althea.
Welcome.
Your input was extremely valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, other problem areas? Failure to ensure a safe environment for customers and clients. Once in a while, we get a house that's been condemned, but it's on the market. And you really have to be, sometimes they don't let you in because it's that dangerous. But it's up to you as the listing agent to make sure that it's safe to show. And that's why too, if are some uneven stairs, particularly the basements, there might be like one big stair and then smaller stairs or more normal stairs. Protect yourself by putting up a sign. Stairs to the basement are slightly uneven.
Oh.
Or watch your step as you go into the basement, or watch your head, because sometimes we have low ceilings. So just make those, put a little sign and tell the seller, hey, listen, it's important that someone not get hurt when they're looking, because you are co-liable. Failure to update New Jersey Real Estate Commission of any legal charges. You are all renewing your licenses right now, and you all have that questionnaire asking you if your license has been revoked or suspended in any state, right? You've all answered those questions, I hope. Okay. And by the way, if there is a legal charge, you need to report it to the New Jersey Real Estate Commission. All right. If there's, for example, drunk driving, that has to be reported. Okay, being involved in fraudulent activity outside of the real estate arena. I think I don't have to explain that, do I? And failing to immediately turn over client deposits to the appropriate escrow agents. Oof. Okay, recap. Risk management, we defined it. In the risk areas, the best practices, real estate commission findings, lean into your brokers and your resources. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Okay? Now, we do have fair housing here also, and I'm going to take a minute and go through that. You all know we have a social equity committee, and that our belief system has been changed to reflect equality for all, opportunity for all. So Gary Keller was very quick after what has been happening in our country to create the social equity task forces. The truth is that racial injustice persists, and in order to help change that, it's critical to not only say something about it, but to do something about it. And this was a letter Gary Keller sent about a year ago to all of the agents, everybody in his company. All right, so here's our belief system, and equity opportunities for all has been added. And the new Agent Leadership Council now has a committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, I mentioned Long Island. There it is. 93 real estate agents, all companies were tested. They send out testers to see if they're treated equally, and 240 hours of undercover video footage. That's someplace you don't want to see your face. Okay, the listings were analyzed and the findings, the real estate agents displayed unequal treatment of their clients. Asians, 19% of the time,
It's horrible.
Hispanics, 39% of the time, and Blacks, 49% of the time. All right, common problems include steering. Hey, you're going to love this neighborhood. Come on over here, right? Or discriminatory practices in client financing. Okay, we have a tester here. I don't know whether I have the video on that. That would have been fun to watch too. Okay, problematic financing issues. Okay. What's your availability? When can you start looking at the house? Failure to accurately understand and interpret low down payment financing. FHA was designed for clients who are credit worthy, but do not have a large down payment. That's important when you present an offer with an FHA. Housing segregation and the wealth gap. White families have a net worth 17 times greater than that of Black families. And the risk to the lender, not the seller. When properly qualified, the FHA insures the loan for the lender. Okay. And the difference between the whites and the Blacks' net worth is housing. That's us, guys. FHA guidelines are more flexible than conventional loans and can be utilized by a wider number of buyers. This creates more market pressure. FHA does require that homes meet higher property condition standards. Keep the focus on the home. School recommendations. Agents often cite the quality of schools when identifying communities that clients should consider to rent or purchase. Avoid making unsolicited town recommendations based upon your own perception of the schools. That could look like steering, correct? Parents are best at determining what makes a school best for their child, not agents. You can send them to the school, have them go speak to the Board of Ed or the principals. Always be the source of the source. Remember that, be the source of the source. Whether it's schooling or town hall information, zoning information. Integrity, do the right thing. Be aware of your blind spots. We all have them. We don't like to admit them, but admitting them is the first step. And the gap between our intention and the outcome of our actions. Always ask yourself how you can constantly improve in this area. And that looks like that's it. Do you have any questions? And was this a little eye-opening?
That was awesome. That was a lot. Can you send us that, Patty?
Let me see. I'll stop sharing.
I took notes for 3 pages and then I took some pictures, but it was too much.
Okay.
A lot of information.
It is a lot of information.